Here is the breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. 2025 Russia-Ukraine War Day 1379. Renewed fighting, strategic strikes and stalled diplomacy. Russian forces have captured the village of Charboni in Ukraine's Zaporizhia region. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces reportedly struck Russian oil sites, including an oil depot and Druva pipeline, Russia's major export line. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to SATV's International Affairs, live broadcasting from SATV's Dhaka studio. My name is Rashid Kanchan. I'll be your host, and I have in the studio our International Affairs commentator Shamsul Alam Pantho. Let me begin from him. Sir, what are the latest news strikes you can see according to your observation?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kanchan. Of course, welcoming all our viewers to the program here today. And today is December 4th. There are some numerous strategic updates that I want to share with our viewers. First off, Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy, and Jared Kushner was in Moscow as of yesterday. And now they are coming back to the US, and they shall be meeting in Florida to talk about the Ukraine and the US negotiation position. And of course, alongside we have other news which include the Chinese are opposing any action that violates the purposes and principles of the UN Charter or infringes on the sovereignty and security of other countries. This is, of course, regarding the US position and US tensions in the Caribbean according towards Venezuela, according to various media outlets. And of course, in the Middle East, leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council said that any violation of a member state's sovereignty represents a direct threat to the bloc's collective security, reaffirming their rejection of the use of forces or threats against any GCC country in their final communique at the 46th summit in Manama, Bahrain. These are the latest updates as of today.
All right, sir, let's begin. Vladimir Putin's visits India and stalled peace push in Ukraine. The Russian president began a visit to India today, his first since the war in Ukraine started, at a time when diplomatic efforts to end the war are faltering. Meanwhile, fighting continues. Russian forces reportedly captured the village of Sarvoni in southeastern Zaporizhia. Sir, I just want to get your opinion in what does Putin's India visit signal about Moscow's global strategy amid the Ukraine war?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Kanchan. I believe that this is holding some kind of significant importance. I want to begin by saying that way back in 2022, when Russian oil was sanctioned heavily by the Western powers, India became one of the places where Russia could easily export out its natural resources, namely crude oil and if not natural gas. And at this moment, this visit, of course, was planned earlier on in this year, which I understand is important. Immediately after one of the partners, as of recent days, we see United States working with Russia regarding the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire, if not an end cessation to the war. But in relationship to India, immediately after the BRICS summit held earlier this year, we've seen how Donald Trump's administration had hiked up the tariff package for India all the way up to 50%. This is a strategic move in order to cripple the Russian war machine.
All right, sir, we are in a connection with Washington, D.C., where SATV's geopolitical correspondent, very senior journalist, ambassador, and of course a peace negotiator, Norman Flat-Barnes is there. Norman, I know you are always following the world's top news. What you have in your basket right this moment, positioning from Washington, D.C.?
Good morning. Believe it or not, today we have a pretty quiet day in terms of news in Washington, D.C. We're still following the situation with Russia and Ukraine. And here in the United States, we're still bringing up the issue with Venezuela. How the Congress right now is very concerned about the activity developing in the area around Venezuela with our military. So they are basically talking about how we can prevent our military from putting boots on the ground in Venezuela.
All right, Norman, as we are talking, me and our international affairs commentator Shamsulam Pant is talking about the Vladimir Putin's India trip in such a time where Steve Witkoff is in Moscow. He will be traveling to St. Petersburg today to meet with few diplomats, and along with him there are Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of United States President Donald Trump. My question is, could increased Russia-India trade undercut Western pressure, and what would that mean for the war? Because we have seen yesterday in the morning, MEPs, member of European Parliament, has passed a bill. They will cut all energy deals with Russia till 2027, and today Putin is traveling to India to create new and old trade deals with one of the largest country in the world. What is your opinion on that, Mr. Norman?
Well, as we addressed yesterday, Russia is developing a future with the rest of the world. Basically, what's happening is that they understand that Europe and the South Asia is heavily dependent on trade and commerce. Instead of waiting for the United States to make a decision, they are providing alternatives. So right now, I'm not surprised to see that Russia is basically talking to India about trade deals. They're looking at alternatives instead of dealing with the tariffs issues. Russia is looking at how they can get their oil, how they can get their trade, how they can get the commerce going, how they can do other things. So Russia, China is now looking at that alternative solution to the Western response, because they all believe that the United States is unstable, and we are now looking at getting into confrontations with again Venezuela. Venezuela is a big issue with the oil and gas issues, and how we dealt with our Congress. Right now, Congress and our president are not seeing eye to eye, and people are not trusting what the United States is saying in regards to their trade agreements in the future. We also realize, and the world realize, that the current administration tenure will be up in 3 years. After that, there will be a whole new game going on. So they are planning for the future instead of what's happening right now. Right now, they see the situation with the U.S. as a temporary impediment, but the future, they're looking beyond that. So Russia is basically looking for the future. They're trying to forecast how we can establish relationship after the current administration is over, and how that we can move forward. So basically, the alternative has been put out the table about how we, not what we're doing today, but how can we get along in the future. So it's a very wise decision for them to basically to put the seed in other people's mind that you should doubt what the Western people are saying.
All right, sir. Let us pass another 36 months, because you are with Donald Trump administration only 11 months, 4 days is running. I want to go back again to that Putin's New Delhi visit, India visit. Sir, Shamsulam Pantho, does this visit undermine the existing sanctions regime against Russia?
Thank you so much for the question. I was hearing Ambassador Norman Ford Barnes in his statement, and of course he has a reason to understand where Russia plays into global geopolitics. But as for your question, this would mark the 23rd India-Russia annual summit, and that just shows us how many years they have worked in coordination in understanding various sectors, including defense cooperation, military hardware, energy and trade, economic and industrial ties, and of course global and regional issues. When we talk about this certain relationship between India and Russia, it is definitely strategic. There are no cultural, if not ethnic ties tying these two regions up. However, they do understand the takeaways that working together could definitely benefit the both countries. And as Ambassador Norman Floyd was saying, the Venezuelan aspect is now garnering a lot of media attention. This is because the Treasury Department announced new sanctions targeting key affiliates of the Venezuela-based gang Tren de Aragua for money laundering. This is just another step in the war that US is ramping up towards Venezuela.
Right.
On the other side, we have China coming out opposing the aggression towards Venezuela. We have the Russians coming out in support of the Venezuelans, trying to avoid any kind of escalation.
All right, sir, because China has a huge investment in Latin American countries. We'll go over that subject, but as you are talking about the relationship between India and Russia, we don't find any ethnic relationship or religious similarity, but it is a historical relationship. I want to get attention from Ambassador Norman Floyd Barnes, sir. How might India's historical non-aligned stance influence global diplomacy now?
Thanks for the question. India, because of this population size and presence, has an impact on trade, and everything in commerce. The United States do a lot of business with India, and that same thing goes on with the rest of the world. Well, good example, why is Russia talking to them? Because they have something that Russia do not. They have ability to manufacture stuff, they have ability to provide resources, all these things. So India is a very pivotal point on how things is going to move forward in the future. So India is in a position of, do we continue with our Western relationship, or do we enhance our already established relationship with China, Russia, and the EU? How do we do that? So they are in a very, I would say, a very critical position right now to basically to play both ends to the middle. The Western side would love for India to be pro-Western and not so much dealing with the rest of the world, the powers, Russia, China. But India has to understand they have to get the best price, the best cost for their services, their prices, whatever. And the tariffs issue put a real concern to them on exactly by being priced with the tariffs. Do we rely on the current administration here in the United States on what they're going to do? Will they uphold what they say, or would they again come up with another tariffs, another price, another penalty for them? Or do we go with what's best for our country in terms of basically how do we survive, live another day, and make profits for ourselves instead of this unstable appearance that the Western world is putting out there? So they're looking at other options. Again, the word alternatives is coming up, and basically China and Russia is putting that to the test.
All right, very significant and analytical analysis on this India and Russian engagement. Shamsuram Pantho, I want to ask you, can these diplomatic engagements like this, I mean India and Russian engagement, realistically sway the trajectory of the war? Does it mean India is supporting this aggression to Ukraine because India is trying to do business with Russia, where Russia is a war country right this moment?
Thank you for the question. There are certain takeaways that one must consider which side they want to support. For one example, that India heavily relies on crude oil. So it is open to understanding where they can source this from. And if Russia is set to deliver on its promise for cheaper oil alternative, definitely India will take this opportunity. On the other side, Ukraine remains the bread and basket of Europe, and they have a humongous amount of grain exports towards that region, of course outside as well. So one must want to know how they can antagonize this situation and figure out what they can take away from the spoils of war, if you would like to call it. But the gruesomeness of the war has gone down in an immediate effect by U.S. mediation and of course by the representation of the 19-point plan, which was previously known as the 28-point plan. Although it favors Russia, but there are certain elements that Ukraine might want to think. There are certain instances where a top official of the country was being scrutinized for corruption charges. So these are quite so important for Ukrainians to understand. Are they still in the proper leadership?
All right, sir. We have to look at the United Nations, sir. United Nations resolution demands Ukrainian children deported by Russia to be returned. Just one line used. On December 3, the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, backed by the US and 90 other nations, adopted a resolution demanding the immediate unconditional return of Ukrainian children allegedly abducted by Russian soldiers since the war began in 2022. Russia, along with 11 other nations, opposed the resolution while 57 countries abstained. My question to Norman, this is a civilized world. Why Russia, along with other 11 countries, opposed this matter regarding the children return to the homeland? Don't you think this is so uncivilized, this is so cruel, this is so unacceptable? Mr. Norman, sir.
Yes, this is very basically uncivilized psychological terrorism. Basically, the purpose of this is to provide a psychological advantage to Russia in regards to the aggression to Ukraine by seizing the children, which is our children is our greatest asset, and basically by taking them away from their parents creates another hardship, put pressure on the Ukrainian people to force their government to end this war. They need their family back. They need their children back. And by holding the children as hostage as a bargaining tool is one of the cruelest things I ever seen. Is very sinister, very, very cruel, and is not going to reap any type of benefits. It's just basically going, again, another attempt to destroy the infrastructure and the fabric of the country, and basically to put bitter feelings in the hearts of the people of Ukraine. So they will not forgive this. Where even how this thing ends, it's not going to create a situation where the Russians are going to forgive what's happening to their children, and more importantly, how they going to relate to Russia. You deal with the family, you have a problem, and this will be a generational issue for Russia by doing this. Not a very good move.
Sir, we will discuss on it more because this news is so disturbing. The children are the victim. Before I go to the break, I want to take a small comment from our international affairs commentator, where United States along with 90 other countries are demanding unconditional and immediate return of children to their family to Ukraine, where Russia along with 11 other opposed the resolution and 57 countries abstained. Do you feel good on this news?
Thank you for the question. This is of course a very heinous news. It is as worse as conducting genocide in my opinion. Of course, that 91 countries voted in favor, 12 against, and 57 abstained or were not absent. The scope of the problem includes almost estimated 19,500 to 20,000 more children have been deported or forcibly transferred from Ukraine since 2022. So the number seems to be quite in the highs, and the United Nations have already called a vote. But it is the Russian position right now. Whether Russia wants to be blamed for this heinous act is a matter of question, because the children who are affected, their lives have been eternally scarred. and the entire identity of a Ukraine nationality? If not, what are their nationalities? That is going to be a question for these children who have been displaced.
Yes, sir, this is so disturbing news. But when I'll be back, I'll have a question to Norman. What practical steps should be taken to enforce the demand for child repatriation? Because you are a father of children, I'm a father of children, Shamsulam Panto is a father of children. So this news is very disturbing. I'll be back soon. Then
Yes.
I'll be back soon, sir. Then you will respond this question. Here is a break.
Okay. Okay.
সারা দেশে লাখো মানুষের কঠোর কর্মতৎপরতা ও নিষ্ঠায় এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন 16 কোটি মানুষের হাতের নাগালে। দীর্ঘ 30 বছর ধরে বিশ্বস্ততা ও দ্রুততার সাথে সেবা দেওয়ায় গ্রাহক সেবায় এখন শীর্ষে। বাংলাদেশে গ্রাহক সেবার সাফল্যের পর এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন বিশ্ব বাণিজ্য কেন্দ্র সিঙ্গাপুরে। আপনার যে কোনো পণ্য সিঙ্গাপুর থেকে বাংলাদেশে বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন। এসএ পরিবহন প্রাইভেট লিমিটেড, লজিস্টিক্স পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, 22 রবার্টস লেন, সিঙ্গাপুর 218302। ফোন 0065 629 24900। বাংলাদেশ থেকে সিঙ্গাপুরে পণ্য বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন ঢাকা সহ দেশের যে কোনো 80টি শাখা কেন্দ্রে। এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, আপনার সেবা সব সময়।
Welcome, Grand Palace Hotel, Dhaka. A majestic lobby blending timeless elegance with modern design. Experience 5-star comfort in suites and rooms. Sophisticated fine dining restaurant.
As you heard, Russia opposed the resolution taken by the United Nations on majority votes. 91 countries is demanding immediate and unconditional return of children to their family in Ukraine or Poland or Belarus. The families are living, but Russia along with 11 countries opposed that decision. I said I will ask a question to Norman Flood Barnes, very seasoned journalist, former ambassador and negotiator. Sir, what practical steps should be taken to enforce the demand for child repatriation? We just want to hear from you.
Yes. The issue should not be an issue. Families need to be together, and every effort by the UN, other countries, and the world, for that fact, should go to the point of that we must keep the union together. Sanctions, restrictions, all of these type of things. They should not be able to do business with countries that, in the act of taking hostages, taking kids away, destroying families. That is not a situation where governments should put their hands in. If they get involved in this type of stuff, one of the things I recommend is basically immediate sanctions. We cut off all relationships with the countries until they put the family back together. Trade should cease. Formal recognition to the point resolutions that we will not negotiate and talk to you. Strong messages need to be put out there in terms of basic commerce and trade. They have to be a decision. They have to be, it have to be a cutoff point in time. This is one of the points. The family fabric has to be maintained, and anything that messes with that or influence and impact that should be guarded as an act of war or act of terrorism, and it cannot be condoned. I mean, we deal with a lot of stuff right now. We're killing people, but basically, one of the worst ways to kill people is to separate the family. It has generational effects. It's not going to move forward. It's basically saying that your parents are gone, and we're going to do better for you, and we're going to make you move on forward. We're starting a whole new life. That is not going to work. It never works, and it's going to backfire. But I think the whole United Nations, one of the things they can do is that they can put out that we do not condone this, and we're not going to have any type of relationship with countries that engage in this type of illegal and unethical activities.
All right, sir. I just want to read one very famous quote which I really liked by Napoleon Bonaparte. He says, "In every war, truth is the first casualty. Truth dies first, but humanity must never be the last." I really like this quote for all time. I want to ask Shamsul Panto, our international affairs commentator, sir, how will Russia's opposition affect implementation and international unity regarding this ceasefire or the current situation in Russia-Ukraine?
Thank you so much. I believe that we were talking about how the children were very displaced, and how, as your question,
Yes,
you have asked me regarding the ceasefire between the two sides. Look, we have to understand that there is an underdog in this fight. That is Ukraine. There is no doubt about it. Ukraine has lost territory. It has lost earlier on, the Crimea has been taken away. So they must understand that an aggressor is trying to put them down. They are trying to use the big foot on the sovereignty. And if they want to understand that even losing some part of land, but then reclaiming the entirety of the entire country and coming back to an economic successful situation is quite so important than continuously having a war going on. And as per the children issue that you said about the vote yesterday, I just wanted to add, before we can move on, the fact that when a disaster strikes, whether it be a boat being capsized or a natural disaster happening, it is always the women and the children who are being protected first, because they are the carriers of the future. They are going to be leading in the future. So that is one aspect. Another aspect includes that children are the ones that can be most indoctrinated into the wrong ideology around the world. Another example includes minors being recruited into gangs and cartels in Mexico. There was a story earlier this year that children as young as 12 have been recruited into cartel ranks and groomed into killers. This is the dangers of children. If they are taken away at a very ripe age, they are indoctrinated with the wrong message. So, of course, those 91 economies are definitely thinking that something like that may take place in this issue. But as for the ceasefire, one must see the US position. US is now stepping back to somewhat not supporting Ukraine to that extent. However, Ukraine does have friendship along European nations, because Europe understands the threat Russia poses even before attacking Ukraine. So as of now, 3.5 years have gone by, and whether or not Russia can focus on other aspects than this war is a matter of question.
Right, sir. You have raised one very dangerous question. Mexico's different groups are recruiting children soldiers, child labor soldiers. I have had the experience 20 years back to interview in Sierra Leone in different areas when the civil war was going on. I interviewed child rebel soldiers, very dangerous. I will come on that. Why the top leaders of the world are not considering the future, the prospect of this planet, why these things is taking place? Are we going mad, Mr. Norman, sir?
Yes. My first response is that the acronym MAD is very accurate. When you take a child at a very young age and you indoctrinate them and you change how they think, you're talking about the future. Basically, they are damaged. They are swayed to go a certain way, and these organizations and these governments who think they can use these child mercenaries to get their way. Yes, they're getting a very temporary response. They're getting their will temporarily. But in long term, this will have a backfire effect on them. They will change on them. Yes, they will do what you say right now. But when they learn and get to a certain point, they will turn on you because the hate is there. They hate you for what you did to them and they hate you for what you represent. And they hate themselves for being allowed to be used like this. So it's a very temporary solution to a long-term problem, but it's creating that is the definition of what I call a terrorist. You develop someone, you put the seed in their mind, and they carry out hindrance acts, but in the end they turn on you. We see these things happen again. The mind cannot process this thing. They can do temporary acts for you, but at the end of the day, once they start figuring out and thinking about it, it's going to have a terrible effect on the community and society as a whole.
I'm sure Shamsulam Pantho will add something with this because you are talking about very significant things, sir.
This is, of course, not just regards to Ukraine and Russia, or the fact that, as Norman was pointing out, that a child might be directed and a seed might be planted into their brain that they might have to carry out petty theft, if not robbery, if not murder. And of course, when a child conducts a murder, you have done it because of poverty, because of social aspiration, because of offer of belonging. But the days afterwards, you will think it will eat into your mind. So that is quite so important. And if you look at Bangladesh in general, there is a word that is very popular in our society. It's called Kishore gang. The direct translation of that is gangs led by the youth. And it is not just a problem there in that part of the world, it is a problem everywhere. So policymakers and of course governments should come out and protect the children worldwide.
Excellent. Our policymakers should really focus on these topics because they will lead the world in future, they will lead the country in future. Ladies and gentlemen, time again has come to go for a short commercial break. After the break, we will be talking something very important regarding Israel and Gaza issue. So far news is telling partial ceasefire, opening of border crossing, humanitarian crisis. Still, Palestinian people are moving into Gaza for medical treatment.
Crystal clear swimming pool for ultimate relaxation. Modern gym and serene spa for well-being. Perfect venue for corporate events, weddings and parties. Seamless and secured. Elegant and eye-catching design. Indulge, relax, discover the first 5-star chain hotels in Bangladesh. Grand Palace Hotel Dhaka, 22 Kakrail, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Welcome to Grand Club at Mirpur 10 Dhaka. Elegant spa and wellness facility for ladies and gents. Play pool and snooker in international standard billiard zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to SATV's International Affairs, live broadcasting from SATV's Dhaka studio. Gaza Strip, partial ceasefire, opening of border crossing and humanitarian crisis must be discussed in today's show, because news says authorities announced the reopening of the Rafah border crossing in a matter of days to allow Palestinians to leave Gaza for medical treatment, because they are suffering number of injuries, heavy organ losses, and of course seasonal flu and diarrhea. Meanwhile, the war-torn region still faces massive destruction, thousands homeless, and growing wintertime humanitarian risk and displace. Gazans struggle through harsh condition. I just want to do a question to Norman Flood Barnes. Everybody's focus is in Moscow. Everybody's focus is in Russia, Ukraine, Putin, Zelensky, and now new focus is going Putin, Modi. Who is looking at or taking care of Gazan people after a successful ceasefire, which our international affairs commentator always say very fragile ceasefire. Sir Norman.
Yes, this so-called ceasefire is basically a delayed genocide. Yes, we're going to lessen our war against you, but we're still going to keep the pressure on, basically by denying food, water, access, medical care. It's a form of genocide. It's the same thing as dropping a bomb. If you're talking about the people, we're not talking about Hamas. We're talking about the people. The people, the women, the children, the families are again suffering because of this delayed control of the situation, the narrative. Israel is trying to control the narrative and to receive its desired outcome. And how they doing this is by putting constant pressure on the people that we are going to create a very harsh situation until you comply with our demands. And the best way of doing that is basically deny medical services, the basic social necessary things to sustain life. And as a consequence, people are going to die. When you deny these services, the only thing can happen is bad. Next thing you know, disease sets in. And basically that is a form of genocide that is going to spread. And the issue is, and I don't think Israel understands, it becomes a world epidemic, and the world is going to be affected by this. These people are going to be moving around, the disease is going to carry around, and the world has to respond. So basically, you're trying to occupy land which you can't occupy because it is be so destroyed, so much in terms of disease and everything else, that no one can inhabit the land, even yourself. So you're going to have to spend the resources that you are using now to delay help for the people to now repair and develop. So basically, you're creating a terrible situation where no one, even yourself, you may win the war, but you're not going to win the situation because you're basically creating a situation where humans cannot exist.
Sir, you have heard in the news that Beijing, China has started its role in Middle East diplomacy. They have committed 100 million China's aid to the Gazan people, Palestinian people. Do you think this is a kind of official entry to the Middle East conflict by China's communist policy?
Yes, as you know, China whole philosophy is to develop infrastructure around the world. That is what they do. They do it in Africa, they're doing it in South America, and it's natural for them to do that, provide rebuilding opportunities, aid, resources, whatever to the people. Again, the alternatives. So China plan is world dominance, and they're doing it by providing an alternative solution to people and providing them with the stuff they need. So Gaza is a perfect location for them to come in and provide what they do. They build, they develop, and they provide resources necessary to sustain the area. So consequently, the people will be in their favor. particularly Gaza right now, particularly the Palestinians right now. They need this aid, and China is ready to provide an alternative solution to this.
All right, sir. Let me get the comment from this new dynamics of the situation. China in, USA out.
Thanks for the question. And of course, when we talk about Israel and the Gaza situation, there are quite some of the news that I want to give updates. Almost 5 Gazans were killed in Israeli strikes after Netanyahu's threat, amongst which 2 were children, and this attack happened around the refugee camp in the Al-Mawasi area of Khan Yunis. And of course, on the other side, US President Donald Trump is saying that phase 2 of his Gaza plan is going to happen very soon. But his words are faltering with the amount of time that goes by, especially that over the last 50 days, almost 400 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli side. And of course, as you were mentioning, Rafah crossing is being open, slowly being open for aid and civilian movement. This is, of course, in an attempt by Egypt and other countries in the region. And of course, prosecutors are still questioning Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at a Tel Aviv district court over the corruption charges against him. But coming back to the question that you have placed, USA out and China's entry, any place where the US is seen negotiating, US is seen implementing, that is the very location where the Chinese will follow through. It is not just the Palestinian question here. If you look at the US pullback or the US step out of these United Nations semi or sub authorities, you have UNESCO, we have the World Health Organization, we have the World Food Program, all of these places that US has stepped out of, China has stepped in. Even if you go back to the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus that happened in 2020 that shook the entire world of geopolitics, it was China that had a big hand in providing vaccine support all across Asia. So once again, one must understand, as Norman Floyd Barnes was saying, the Chinese aspiration include a special motivation which is called towards global domination. I think global domination is their final achievement or their target.
Sir, we are running out of time, but one question must go to Norman Floyd Barnes. How American people are considering China's rise in the world economic platform, China's dominance in US economy, and China's dominance in diplomacy as well, where United States is continuously losing one event after another event, sir?
Well, it's very simple, human nature. You have two products. One is offered by one vendor and another one is offered by the other. Which one is cheaper? Which one is more consistent? Which one is more reliable? And basically, the alternatives is now basically all China's doing right now. They want to be in the neighborhood, offer themselves as the alternative. They want to provide more, faster quality and without conflict. And on the other side, we have conditions controlled tariffs. We want to control there. So people are now looking up and saying, okay, which one do I get the best value? Where's the best value for me? Which one helps me, my family, get to the next day? And that is the question, instead of, okay, we are promising you this.
All right, sir. All right. You have lost the connection with Washington. I really thank you. Thanks to Norman Floyd Barnes for his wonderful contribution, sir. Time is running so fast. We will have to conclude today. And I appreciate your participation and very smart analysis on the news events today. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be regular on Sunday in the same time, Bangladesh Standard Time 2 p.m. But if anything take place, very emergency and news values, we may get back anytime soon.